So the Eco-Village was founded in 2008, and since the beginning that people really wanted to have a permaculture garden. And so basically the first thing that they started doing was to plant a lot of berry bushes and fruit trees. And then later on with time and people that were interested in gardening started to join the community, they also started to create the annual vegetable garden, which is basically what we have here the most, at least in this horseshoe. Yeah, gardening was seen as one of the most important things for the Eco-Village, for the learning opportunity that it offers, but also in an attempt to become as self-sufficient as we can. So permaculture, it's basically a framework that was developed by two Australian academics back in the 70s. And so through studying biology and botany, but also studying how the Aboriginal people used to do things in Australia, they come up with this framework to apply to gardening that basically implies the care and the upkeep of nature as much as possible. So it's organic, no use of chemical fertilizers, and the big idea behind it is that you imitate nature. So you design your garden in a way that nature would have done it herself. The horseshoes, they're also part of the permaculture system, so they serve as a wind barrier, because here in Gotland it's very windy since it's an island, and alongside being a wind barrier, they also serve as a sun trap, because that's what the plants want the most, right? It's the sun and a quiet environment to grow in. So when we talk about choosing a location for a garden, there's many different things that you need to keep in mind, but definitely one of them is what type of soil you have. So it's important to choose a place where you have fertile soil, and that you can observe by the type of weeds that are growing in the place. For instance, nettles are a good indicator of a soil rich in nitrogen and other nutrients that you need for a good garden setup. It's also important to bear in mind the hours of sunlight that your spot gets, and accessibility to water, if it's protected from the wind, and other climate conditions that are important to have in mind when you think of a garden. All right, so to test the soil, there's many different ways, some quite complex, and you need, a lab to do. But one test that we do here in Suderbin is the sausage test, we call it. And basically you just take a little bit of the soil and you try to make a little sausage with it, and you see how it forms. So for instance, you can see here that even though it holds, it's breaking off a bit. So this is a sign that it's quite the sandy soil, which is not bad. It just means that water is going to drain more off of the soil, and you might need to add a lot of organic matter to make the soil better. Another thing that you can look at your soil is, and this is a good sign, is to check for worms. If you have worms in your soil, that's a very good sign. It means that you have a lot of organic matter that the worms are helping to transform into humus and fertile soil. Okay, so there's many different ways to start growing plants in your garden. What we do here a lot, as said before, because of the weather, is that we start our seeds indoors. In late March, early April, we spend a lot of time indoors growing our seeds and our plants from pots. So all you need is a pot and some soil, like this, and you just need to fill your pot with the soil. Make sure that it doesn't have many lumps. Try to crumble things, and make sure also that the pot is filled all the way to the top. You can compress it a little bit, and in this case we're gonna be sowing some peppermint seeds that we have from the garden. And what we do is we take our seeds. Some seeds are very tiny. This is the case of the peppermint seeds. So it's going to be hard to know exactly how many we're going to be putting in the pot, but it's okay. Later on, when they grow, we can select the better plants. So you sprinkle some seeds on top. just a couple more. And then what you do, because these seeds are so tiny, you can just sprinkle a little bit more soil on top, so you cover them like that. And the last step is to water your seeds like that. And then if you want, if you're going to be growing a lot of things, you can always take a little marker and write what you have on your pot, so you don't forget. Yeah. That's it. Peppermint. This is one thing that we want to improve in Surubin, and we want to have more greenhouses. But currently we just have this one. We call it Abuela Berta. We had some Spanish people here in the past that decided to name it like that. And outside the greenhouse we try to grow some peppers and some cucumbers. They're already reaching the end of their life here in Sweden. But inside we still have some tomatoes and some melons growing. So you can go check them out. Yeah. So, as you can imagine, Sweden is not really the best place to grow vegetables. But here in Gotland, it is one of the best places within Sweden to grow vegetables. But for heat-loving vegetables like tomatoes, melons, etc., you do need a greenhouse primarily. So that's what we have happening here. And we have a lot of ripe tomatoes over there doing their thing. And the melons that should soon, hopefully, you guys will still have the chance to try some melons out. We're here next to our compost boxes, so a really essential part of growing food is to have good compost. So your plants and your trees are always going to need some extra nutrients while they are growing, and a good way to give them those nutrients is by making compost piles. So very briefly, what you need to make a compost is that you need to make sure that you are combining nitrogen-rich materials with carbon-rich materials. So you can think of the nitrogen as your green things, like weeds, plant material, and the carbon is going to be things like straw or hay, dried leaves, and that's pretty much most of the things that we use in our homemade compost. And we do layers. So we do layers of brown materials with green materials, and you pile them up, and you add a lot of water to get the composting process going. Basically, you leave it for the microorganisms that live in the compost pile to do the decomposition of these materials. And hopefully, if you do things right, at the end you will have this dark brown material, not too humid, not too dry, and it'll be, after 4-6 months, it should be ready for you to put on your vegetable beds or on any other plants that you want to improve the growth of. Anyway, we decided to grow some different types of potato here, and let's see. I don't have high hopes that they'll be very big, but let's see, because we didn't fertilize them at all. It was a bit of an experiment. Because people say usually that, you know, potatoes are heavy feeders, you need to give them a lot of manure or compost, but I decided to just experiment without. So let's see. Maybe I'll realize. We have another field with potatoes that were fertilized, so let's see. Maybe I'll always fertilize them from now on. Okay. the soil a little bit. So here's the potato plant. It's this one. Some of them I think got a bit diseased. That's why they look a bit yellowish and brown. But okay. So by doing this, I already start finding some.
Nice.
That's why I also brought the rakes, the other two. But yeah, okay. So we're here, and then I'm just gonna go with the fork. And I just put my foot under, and then I lift, and then you start to see. Ah, they're actually looking quite okay.
Beautiful, beautiful.
No, but some people think it's kind of like a Easter hunt, you know?
Aí eu ponho no...
So I think that it is an important topic, so I can talk a little bit about it, which is this idea of how does gardening can have a therapeutic approach to it. And although no one here in Suderbin is, professionally educated in psychology or therapy methods, for me it has become very obvious how good for your mental health gardening is. And I can just speak about my own example. When I arrived here 2.5 years ago and I started gardening, I noticed after some months how much more calm and centered I was in comparison to the past. My anxiety levels dropped significantly, and I cannot explain it, but I think that there's something very profound and powerful about interacting with plants and slowly reconnecting with nature. Of course, we're growing food because we need to eat it, so there's, a pragmatic sense, but it does fill you with joy, to walk in the garden, see all the flowers, all the things that you can eat, and and change a little bit this distance and this separation that exists nowadays between people and the land that we come from, regardless of having been born in it or not.
you.